west to the islands of Oronsay and Colonsay, and then north to the Garvalachs and the Slate Islands around Easdale. Oronsay, where St. Columba first made landfall on his voyage to Scotland. The story goes that Columba could see Ireland from the highest point on Oronsay, and so he carried on to Iona. The ruins of this fine Augustinian monastery date back to the 14th century. It's in remarkably good condition, considering that the steadings on the farm were built using some of the stones from its walls. The only link between Oronsay and Colonsay is a causeway in these sands, and much of the time it is covered by the tide. Halfway across the causeway is a cross, which marks the boundary to a sanctuary. Once over that boundary, criminals were considered free if they stayed for a year and a day. Colonsay, the bigger of the two islands. It is the property of Lord Strathcona, the descendant of a family of railway barons. His lordship is the owner of some of the finest beaches in the Hebrides. The rocks and cliffs of the Garvalachs, tiny, remote and uninhabited. These strange beehive-shaped structures, no more than stone huts, date back to the days of St. Columba. They were dwellings for the Chaldee monks who made these islands their home. They have survived because so few people ever came here. No tourists looking for souvenirs, no crofters looking for stone to build sheep pens. The little island of Belnahava. This is almost solid slate. In the 19th century, thousands of tons were quarried from here to cover the roofs of the growing cities of Scotland. Hundreds of men laboured in the quarries of Belnahava and lived in these barracks. A few miles to the north, the larger slate island of Easdale. Horse-drawn trams used to trail loads of slate down to the quayside for export all over Britain. The slate industry came to a halt in November 1881 when gales drove huge seas into the island, flooding the slate quarries and ruining the workings. Across a narrow strip of water, the island of Seal. Trees are plentiful, rhododendra thrive, and the vegetation is lush. Seal is linked to the mainland by the Clachan Bridge, built in 1792 by Thomas Telford. It is known, only half-jokingly, as the bridge across the Atlantic. West to the island of Mull, through the Sound of Mull to Tobermory, south to the holy island of Iona, and over to Staffa. The lighthouse at the south end of Lismore watches over the eastern entrance to the Sound of Mull. Jurt Castle, a well-restored medieval building that was the seat of the Clan MacLean. The clan's fleet of sea-going galleys made them a force in the land. In 1588, prisoners from the ill-fated Spanish Armada were held here. The castle was restored in 1912 and is now open to the public. Further north, a very different kind of castle. Torresay is the kind of 19th century pile that many Victorian industrialists ran up for themselves in the Highlands made fashionable by Queen Victoria. Designed by the Edinburgh architect David Bryce in 1858, the 12 acres of Italianate gardens were laid out by Sir Robert Lorimer. North, up the Sound of Mull, past the Calmac ferry heading out of Craignure on its way to Oban. If Mull has a capital, it is the harbour town of Tobermory. It was built at the end of the 18th century by the British Fisheries Society. These days, fishing boats are few and far between, and the harbour is given over to the yachts and pleasure launches of the well-heeled. Under the water lies the wreck of a 16th century Spanish warship, and legends of huge quantities of Spanish gold persist.
What do you think I've seen?
Like most of the Highlands, Mull suffered grievously from the clearances of the 19th century. These are the remains of one of the many villages on the Ross of Mull which lie derelict.
Singing, hey Donald, ho Donald, didn't I do a day?
The people were harried out of their homes and off their land to make way for lowland sheep.
He loosed my heart till its beats kept time to the top and oh my tay. Singing, hey Donald, ho Donald, didn't I do a day? Singing, hey Donald, ho Donald, didn't I do a day?
The high volcanic cliffs of the Ross of Mull, and a few miles away, the island of Iona.
But we'll hae love and freedom if you'll follow me, my dear.
Iona is a stone's throw from the western tip of Mull. On the north side is the little shingle beach where the aristocratic Irish priest Columba is said to have first set foot in Scotland. Iona Abbey, the very heart of Celtic Christianity. The Celtic monastery that used to stand on this site was destroyed no fewer than 6 times by marauding Norsemen. The Abbey and its outlying buildings were not restored until the Reverend George MacLeod founded the Iona community in 1938. Generations of Scottish and Norse kings are buried here, and so is the late John Smith, one-time leader of the Labour Party. Staffa, half a mile long, half a mile wide, and yet one of the most renowned islands in Europe. Made internationally famous by a young German Jewish composer, Felix Bartholome Mendelssohn. Formed out of huge columns of basaltic rock which have been carved by the sea, Staffa is one of the best-known tourist attractions of the Inner Hebrides. Queen Victoria, Keats, Sir Walter Scott, Wordsworth and Turner, as well as Mendelssohn, have all gasped in admiration. And Fingal's Cave, the biggest of the 3 caves that reach deep into Staffa, is a remarkable sight. The columns and spires of a Gothic cathedral formed out of rapidly cooling lava. The uninhabited Treshnish Isles, west of Mull. The last humans left in 1834, leaving the islands to the seabirds, The biggest of the islands is now a bird sanctuary.